YouTube and welcome back to my channel. As promised, we are in the part 2 of my Freelancing in Italy 2 video part series where we talk about freelancing in Italy, and in today's video I'm going to be answering all of your guys' questions on freelancing in Italy and just my experience so far from when I was freelancing part-time and my impressions now that I am fully freelanced. There's not much to say. If you haven't already seen part 1 where I talk about the reasons why I decided to go fully freelance this year, be sure to check out that video. And with no further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, let's see if I can be concise, quick, and to the point because there's a lot of questions. A lot of questions are around taxes and how does it work with taxes. Well, first and foremost, I have a commercialista who handles all of the bureaucracy of it, and literally it's just once in July and once in December. Actually, no, that's a lie. In July, you pay taxes. In December, you pay like an advance on the taxes of next year. And depending on your regime, you'll pay Iva once every 3 months. Like, I think it's February, May, August, and November, if I'm not wrong. That's how it works. Then obviously how much you pay really depends on your situation. What I do and how I make sure that, I just have everything is that it goes in levels. And so it's like up to a certain level, you pay this. And then after that level, on the money that you make after that, you pay that. And I just assume in all cases that I'm gonna have to put away 50 to 60% in taxes. So even if I'm at the lowest level, I just put half of that away and that's going towards tax. Then I'm very, very attentive to costs. I try to find a way to work just about anything into my costs and do most of the things through my business. Obviously only if it makes sense and it's legal, but just, try to merge your life and your business as much as you can, so a lot of things can be costs, and the costs will lower your income, and if you lower your income, you pay less taxes. And if you do those ways, you just get used to it. I mean, I know people get really shocked about how high taxes are in Italy, and they are extremely high, and sometimes I just look and I'm just like, wow, I'm paying tens of thousands of euros in taxes and I'm not making what you would think. There are people in the States and in other countries that make like 100K salaries, 80K salaries, and they could not even fathom the idea of paying 10 to 20,000 euros in taxes. I remember my first year that I had a Partita Iva open, I made like 30K and I ended up paying like 11K in taxes and advances. And that was in the reduced rate bracket. So taxes are a lot, but you get used to it. I'm so used to it now that, I'm just used to it. And honestly, sometimes I sit there and I think about it and I don't know if it's that different from in other places, because take the United States, for example, you pay pretty low, relatively low income taxes compared to Italy, but then you pay insanely high property taxes. In Connecticut, the average property tax is something like $4,000 a year. And so if you add that property tax to your income tax, you might not be paying that much less than the Italian who has very high income tax, but has no property taxes to pay on their first house. So that's how it works. You just put the money aside and then you pay it and you get used to the fact that you're paying it. It's all psychological really, because even if you're not a freelancer, even if you're working for a company, you're paying the same amount of taxes. It's just that you don't notice it because the taxes get taken out before you get the money. That 1.500 that you're making is actually like 2,000 euros and you're paying 500 to 600 euros every month in taxes automatically, which adds up at the end of the year. So that being said, that's how taxes work. Bisogna per forza essere a Milano o lo si può fare anche da altre città tipo Roma? This person is asking if you have to be in Milan to be a freelancer, and absolutely not. You can be a freelancer from anywhere in Italy and obviously anywhere in the world. All being a freelancer means is that you work for yourself and you service clients rather than working for one single client or datore di lavoro or boss. who takes care of all of your taxes for you. You're your own company rather than working in a company. You can do it from anywhere. Of course, I do think there's more opportunity in Milan with respect to other Italian cities, but I think that's another story for another day. Commercialista and notaio are avoidable. I'd say commercialista, no. Accountant is not unavoidable if you're going to be a freelancer, whereas a notary, yes. Notaries are typically required if you have an actual like SRL, so a company. Freelancer is like a single person, but if you have an actual structured company in Italy, you're gonna need a notaio to at least establish the company, if that makes sense. Pro and cons of being a freelancer in Italy. Well, and I think anywhere. I'd say that the pros are that you have more freedom and flexibility and that you can make a lot more. I'd say the cons are that you have more responsibility, you're taking on more risk because it's all your money that you're risking, and the con is that you can make also a lot less or even negative. You can even go into debt. Whereas if you're a normal employee, like you're not gonna owe the company anything. So I guess those are the main ones. It's definitely not for everybody. What Partita Iva did you open for YouTube? I opened and I still have the Partita Iva, which I don't remember what the code is ever, but it's the one for coming up with and implementing marketing campaigns online, or maybe just marketing campaigns. Market prices in Italy plus cultural aspects of meetings, contracts, and payment. Well, it depends on your sector and your individual case. Weirdly enough, I think that in the digital marketing space, I think that Italian creators get paid pretty well from what I understand from my friends in other markets, so no complaints there. Which is not the case in like other sectors. Like I know in other sectors, Italian work has a much lower, I don't want to say value, but they get paid way less. Like an engineer in Italy gets paid way less than an engineer just about anywhere else in the Western world. So in that case, it depends. Cultural aspects of meetings and stuff. One funny thing comes to mind, and I don't know if it's like this in other places, but in Italy, ever since the onset of the pandemic, and us being able to do like remote meetings, I think people around here just so abuse calls, Zoom calls. Like we didn't even have this many meetings in real life when we were meeting each other in real life. Now everything needs a call. And it kills me. I want to put a giant sign on my head that says, per colpa di qualcuno non si fa più calls con nessuno, because I just think that so many times these calls could just be emails, and if I'm sitting in calls all day listening to maybe ideas, I'm not actually working. So that's one interesting thing. And in terms of contracts and payment, I think one thing that stood out to me is that in the States, you're really used to people paying you like either immediately after you get the job done or like 30 days after, whereas in Italy it's quite normal to get paid like 90 days after, and people often forget. So that's one thing you'd have to get used to. Are you afraid of procrastination? Yes and no. By now I'm used to it because it wasn't this day and night shift. Like I said, I started doing I've always had my side hustle, and a good 4 or 5 years I had my side hustle along with other full-time jobs. And so I got really good into making a routine and always carrying out my tasks. There are some days where I'm super tired and I can't really seem to do anything. There are some periods where I'm super tired, but I always get out of them and I always finish the job at the end of the day. I think you just need to get into a routine and it'll work itself out. Can I work as a contracted dipendente and have a side hustle with a Partita Iva? As long as your contract doesn't say you can't, and as long as you're not like in direct competition with your company, you absolutely can. I've always done that. Ovviamente, come trovare clienti, un'introversa che ha difficoltà con il networking. Well, I do think that it's cool. The internet helps a lot. There's a lot of platforms now that you can connect you with clients. There's Fiverr, that just comes to the top of my head, but I'm sure there are others where you can get gig work and come into contact with clients in that way. I think that's the best way to do it so that you don't have to, put too much of yourself out there. Yeah, Otherwise, social media is cool. If you go into certain spaces and you see that people have certain needs, you can offer your services if it's not against the rules. So I'd say use the internet. How do we make sure we're not getting scammed? There are some steps that I always put into place, like when possible, I ask for an advance, but I have to say that most of the times companies are not willing to pay, at least in my sector, advances, però vabbè. Then I will send the client a quote that they look at, they see all the services I'm willing to provide, what it costs, the breakdown of the costs, the taxes, everything, and they have to sign it before I start even like thinking about working. They sign it for a acceptation, and you'd have to talk to a lawyer about the legal aspects of it because it's like legally binding, but not as legally binding as an actual contract. So after we're both on the same terms in terms of the quote and the amount that I'm going to be working, then I will get a contract drawn up, and that is legally binding. And the contract says on it, like, you have to pay in X days, and if you don't, like, you broke the contract and you can get sued. So that's usually the way I go about it, and that pretty much works. Do you have any resources for freelancers that work in the field of translation? Unfortunately, I do not, because I don't work in the field of translation, but hopefully you guys can leave some down in the comment section below. What can you do without a commercialista? I don't honestly know. I do think that if you have a simpler case, like it's just a side hustle that either is making less than 5K or could fall into the regime forfettario, maybe in those cases you can get away with not having a commercialista and just going to, there are these services that, like one-stop services that do all of this stuff for you, like a CAF, or there are online services like Taxify, and those should be able to work. I never did that because I was always in a complicated situation. I'm an American and that complicates my tax situation. I was working a normal job and doing the freelancing stuff, and the amounts that I was making, and that some of it was coming from outside of Italy. So my situation was always too complicated, and I never wanted to risk, somebody that not knowing what they were doing. So if you have a simple case, I'd say you can probably get away with not having a commercialista, but the hope is that you'll make more and more, and the more you make, the more complicated your case gets, and then you will need a commercialista. Yes. Da un determinato che doveva diventare indeterminato mi hanno proposto una partita IVA di quello che prendo è legale. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know if it's legal or not. It first comes into my mind to say yes, because unless it's apprendistato, I don't think that there's any problem with going from your determinato finishing and then them telling you to do something else. Then you have to understand if that's something we want to do. You have to understand if you think it's correct for them to have changed their mind like that. But I don't know. I don't know if it's legal or not. You'd have to ask a lawyer. Is it possible to manage the taxes yourself? How much does being a non-Italian influence things? It is possible. People do it, but Italy is a scary place. Italy is very complicated with its laws, and at least with regards to the tax laws, they change every year. So I don't know how a normal person would be able to keep up. And even worse if you're a foreigner. I mean, even if you're Italian, they don't understand a lot of times what these laws will say. So if you also have the language barrier, it's that much harder. And then again, depending on your citizenship and where you're coming, that might also have an implication on your taxes. So definitely something to consider. Have you applied for any tax benefits such as regime forfettario, etc.? Well, regime forfettario is not a tax benefit as far as I know. It's just it's just a tax bracket, a tax regime. And yeah, I was in it first. I honestly, it's counterintuitive. Everybody wants to be in regime forfettario because it seems that you pay less taxes and it's easier and it's better. But I personally found that the ordinario was much easier and much better. Being able to write off expenses was much more useful for me, and I actually prefer ordinario a million times more. So I feel like I wasted a lot of money and a lot of time in forfettario. And I also want to point out, I'm not even in ordinario because I make so much, because right now the limit I think is 65,000 euros, and you can be in that simplified tax bracket and pay less taxes. In my case, it was just that since I had another job that made a certain amount, I had to have ordinario. I couldn't stay in forfettario anymore. So at first I was really scared and it kind of sucked, but once I got into it, it was fine. What kind of visa do you need to do this? You need a working visa. Ideally, it would be a lavoro autonomo visa, so like a self-work visa, but you can also have a lavoro determinato visa, or no, lavoro subordinato visa. Even if you have a visa based off of another job, you can still open a Partita Iva with that. Dopo quanti anni sei riuscita ad essere freelancer? PS, ho adorato il tuo libro. Grazie. So it's not really about dopo how many years, it's really just about the fact that at a certain point I was making more than the non-declarable limit, and as soon as you get that 5,000 euro limit, you have to start paying taxes, and that happened years ago. 5,000 euros is not a lot of money, so it doesn't take that long before you technically have to become a freelancer, but how long did it take for me to have the confidence to be able to do it by itself? Like I said, I guess it's like 4 or 5 years. How difficult is the bureaucracy side of it? I have to say with my commercialista, not difficult at all because he does everything. Se faccio freelancing in Italia e all'estero, come dichiaro le tasse vivendo in Italia? You declare them in Italy. Come si dichiarano le tasse di un freelancer in Italia? With a commercialista, through a commercialista. How did you build the confidence to decide on an offering and pricing yourself? It took a while, and my job helped because at first my job was managing influencer campaigns, and so I was seeing what my colleagues were making, and it gave me an idea of what I should be asking based on certain values. So that helped. But now going forward, I found that it's a lot easier to get what you deserve through either, and this is just my sector, either through a talent agency or just having a single agent. They're able to bargain a lot more for you. How do you deal with crazy high taxes without getting depressed? I try not to look at them too hard, too bad. As I'm pricing, I already know that it's going to be 50% that I don't see. So if you want 1,000, ask for 2,000. If you want 5,000, ask for 2,500, and you just get used to it. But like I said, it's the same amount of taxes you would be making or paying even if you are a dipendente. In regards to taxes, is it better to freelance online in Italy or in America? Well, the taxes in America on income are way lower, so there's that. Do smart and young commercialisti exist in Italy? Well, I think my commercialista is relatively young. I think he's under 40, or maybe he's around 40, but yeah, he's not the only one. I would recommend him to everybody, but I already recommended him to everybody, and now he's not taking any new clients, so yeah. So there you have it. I hope I answered all of your questions to, a satisfactory level. Feel free to add your guys' own opinions and pareri in the comment section down below. I'd love to know what you guys think. As always, be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one. Mwah.